Good evening, everyone. I'm Anthony Russell. I'm the Deputy Director for Transportation for Baltimore County, and I'm the Chair of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board, or BRTB for short. On behalf of the BRTB, I want to thank you for joining us tonight to learn more about the draft 2025-2028 Transportation Improvement Plan, or TIP, and the associated air quality conformity determination. Both of these important documents can be found and are open for review and public comment through Monday, June the 17th. The purpose of the meeting tonight is a chance to hear from you to learn more about key projects, major changes from last year, and funding levels. This overview will be followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions and learn where to submit your concerns or comments. I'm joined tonight by several staff from the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. Mr. Keith Kucharik will provide an overview of the TIP. Ms. Anna Marshall will share information on the air quality conformity determination. Ms. Regina Aris will moderate the Q&A at the end. And Ms. Monica Haynes Benedict is joining as the public involvement coordinator. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them into the chat box. Leave a voicemail at 1-855-925-2801, extension 10279, or you can email brtbtip@publicinput.com, or text the number 73224 with keyword BRTB/TIB to take our survey and share a comment. Now let's turn it over to Keith.
Thank you. As Mr. Russell said, my name is Keith Kucharik, and I'm a senior transportation planner with the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, and I manage the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. Tonight, I'll give a brief overview of what the TIP is and a broad summary of what's included in the 2025 to 2028 TIP. Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, includes over $4.52 billion in funding over the next 4 years. There are 162 projects included in this year's TIP, which is up from 146 from last year. There are several broad types of projects in the TIP, including bicycle and pedestrian, transit, bridges and highways, and freight movement. The TIP includes all federally funded and regionally significant projects that are programming funding over the next 4 fiscal years. Federally funded projects are projects that receive funds from either the Federal Highway Administration or the Federal Transit Administration. Regionally significant projects are those that may not necessarily be federally funded, but are of regional significance. Regionally significant projects are generally capacity improvement projects that must be included in our air quality model to ensure that the Baltimore region adheres to air quality standards. The TIP is a translation of recommendations stemming from the Long Range Transportation Plan, or LRTP, into a short-term list of projects. This includes specific capacity improvements from the LRTP, such as widened roadways or new transit service, as well as system preservation projects and operational initiatives that are supported in the Long Range Transportation Plan, but have not been previously detailed. As I mentioned, there are 162 projects in the 2025 to 2028 TIP. 11 of those projects are new this year. The TIP programs, as I said, $4.52 billion in federal, state, and local toll revenue funds. 62% of the funding is federal funding, 27% is state funding, and the remaining 11% is toll revenues. Program funds go towards all types of transportation projects, including highway, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian, and is focused on operating and maintaining our transportation system. It's important to note that the TIP is a fiscally constrained document, which means that program funds cannot exceed what is reasonably expected to be available from local, state, and federal sources. Additionally, projects are evaluated to ensure that they are meeting our regional transportation planning goals, such as safety, accessibility, and prosperity. These goals are laid out in our long-range transportation plan, which includes projects that extend out 25 years. Projects in the long-range plan are usually more conceptual in nature. And as those projects move from the conceptual stage to the implementation stage, they move into the short-range transportation improvement program. So let's talk a little bit about some of the funding in the TIP. This graphic shows how we group projects into TIP by category. As you can see, there are 10 different funding categories. This year, the largest funding category is highway preservation, with about 37% of the funds in the TIP. That's followed by transit preservation with about 19% of the program funds. Highway capacity is next with 13.5%. Ports-related projects receive a little over 10% of the funds, and smaller amounts in emission reduction strategies, commuter rail preservation, transit capacity, and so on account for the remainder. It should be noted that there is some crossover in funding categories. For example, highway preservation projects may have some environmental safety elements. Emissions reduction could include replacing transit vehicles with more efficient vehicles, which could fall under the transit preservation category, but this gives us a general idea of how the money is being spent. Of the 162 projects, 96 of those projects are highway preservation, which is about 60% of all the projects. There are 18 highway capacity projects, 14 transit preservation projects, and 14 emission reduction strategy projects. Environmental safety, commuter rail preservation, ports, transit capacity, and transportation enhancement program projects, as well as miscellaneous projects, make up the remaining 20. This graphic shows a breakdown of funding by project sponsor or agency. The largest source of program funds is the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration, which programs just under $1.4 billion of the 4.52 total. The next largest source is the Maryland Transit Administration at about $1.2 billion. It's important to note that the $1.2 billion does not include the vast majority of MTA operating funds, which are state funds only. Those operating funds amount to nearly $5 billion over the course of this 4-year TIP cycle. The Maryland Transportation Authority accounts for about $570 million, and the vast majority of that is toll revenues. The Maryland Port Administration has about $463 million programmed, most of which is going towards the Howard Street Tunnel project, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And although Baltimore City is considered a local sponsor, we list it separately because it has more funding than the remaining local sponsors combined. Baltimore City accounts for $420 million. The remaining locally sponsored projects, which are projects sponsored by Baltimore County, Carroll County, Harford County, Howard County, Queen Anne's County, and the city of Annapolis, account for about $288 million. So in this graphic, you can see the dark green represents the federal funding, and the lighter green represents state funding. And you'll notice under the Maryland Transportation Authority line, there's an orange block, and that represents toll revenues. This is an interactive map that shows all of the projects that can be mapped in the TIP. And if you click on the icon over here on the left, you can see that it brings up a map legend where you can see what each of the colored dots represents, as well as the lines. For example, the red dots represent highway preservation projects, where the blue lines represent emission reduction projects. You can also click directly on the dots, and it'll bring up a separate window with all the project information. I mentioned that the map shows projects that can be mapped. There are a number of regional or area-wide projects that cannot be pinpointed on the map, For example, there's several transit preservation projects for buses and trains that don't have a specific project location. They are, however, included in the TIP document, so you're able to learn more about those projects from the TIP document itself. I've included a few of the more significant projects in the TIP that I'd like to highlight. The first project is the Red Line in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. The Red Line will provide an east-west high-capacity transit line beginning in downtown Baltimore and terminating in Woodlawn. This project is an investment in jobs access, education services, and many other opportunities. It is currently in the alternative development phase and is expected to be operational in 2035. Again, you can click on the line or the dot, and it'll bring up the project information. Anne Arundel County is investing $55 million towards the Odenton Mark Transit-Oriented Development Project, or TOD. Improvements include construction of a new parking garage that will replace the current surface lots. The existing surface lots will then be free for development that supports the TOD efforts. And again, you can click on the dot and it'll bring up the project details. Baltimore City has included 2 projects in this year's TIP that are aimed at improving pedestrian and bicycle safety at over 50 intersections around the city. The project includes such items as crosswalk upgrades, ADA improvements, pedestrian and signal upgrades, geometric improvements, among other things. And locations are scattered throughout the city, so we don't show those individual locations on the map. So we just highlight the entire city to show that these 2 projects do cover 50 intersections throughout. In Baltimore County and Carroll County, we have over 17 combined bridge projects, which will utilize federal and local funds. Improvements range from deck repairs to complete bridge replacements. In Harford County, the Aberdeen Transit-Oriented Development Station Square project will replace the pedestrian overpass with an ADA-compliant pedestrian tunnel and will remove physical barriers separating vulnerable populations from transit service and improve safety and attract mixed-use TOD development. And again, you can click on the dot and bring up more project information. In Howard County, the $25 million Snowden River Parkway from Broken Land Parkway to Oakland Mills Road will be funded using local funds only. This project will add a 3rd lane in each direction, as well as provide a 10-foot shared use trail. This project is expected to be open to traffic in 2025. Maryland State Highway Administration is dedicating $51 million towards improvements along I-97 from US 50 to Maryland 32. Project includes information technology or IT improvements, geometric improvements, and the extension of the left entrance ramp from eastbound US 50 to northbound I-97. These improvements will relieve congestion and provide safety and operational improvements. I mentioned this earlier, but the Maryland Port Administration is partnering with CSX Railroad to reconstruct the Howard Street Tunnel to allow double stacking of containerized cargo to and from the Port of Baltimore. Completion of this tunnel will eliminate a major bottleneck in the national rail freight network. In addition to the Howard Street Tunnel improvements, 21 other bridge structures will be improved to provide sufficient vertical clearance for double stack trains. This project is funded through a combination of federal discretionary grant funding, state funding, and private funding from CSX, and completion of the tunnel is expected in 2027. Maryland Transportation Authority I-95 northbound extension will add express toll lanes from just north of White Marsh Boulevard in Baltimore County to just north of Maryland 24 in Harford County. Project will also reconstruct interchanges at Maryland 152 or Mountain Road and the interchange at Maryland 24. Maryland 24 will also be widened from 2 to 3 lanes from I-95 to just north of Singer Road. Project also includes construction of several noise walls and the reconstruction of 5 separate overpasses. TIP funding for this project is at $448 million and will use only toll revenues. This project is being done in phases, but the total completion is expected in 2027 at a total cost of about $1.1 billion. Although not highlighted, there are many other significant projects that are included in the TIP. For example, Baltimore City has several roadway rehabilitation projects, many of which include bicycle and pedestrian improvements, including Bel Air Road, 25th Street, Fremont Avenue, Madison Street, Park Heights Avenue, Tapsco Avenue, and several others. Maryland Port Administration also has a $22 million rail capacity modernization project at the Port of Baltimore. That project will support the demand for double-stacked trains by upgrading the intermodal container transfer facility with 4 new rail lines and 2 crane beam rails. The ability to double stack at the port and through the Howard Street Tunnel will dramatically improve the efficiency of freight movement in the Baltimore region. And although not shown in the draft TIP, the Maryland Transportation Authority will also include funding for the reconstruction of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. This project will appear in the final TIP, but information was not available to include in this draft. The total cost of the new bridge is expected to be about $1.8 billion. Much, if not all of this, will be federally funded. The new bridge is expected to be complete in 2028. So without going into every project, I wanted to let you know that you can also explore projects by category. So if you look at the menu to the left, you'll see a few tabs. You can click on any of them and you can see it narrows down your selections to that particular category. For example, if I wanted to look at just transit projects, click on that and that's all you'll see is the transit projects. Or if I wanted to see bicycle and pedestrian projects, again, you can click on it and it'll bring up just those projects. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth repeating, I think. These maps only include transit projects that can be mapped. In other words, much of the transit money in the TIP is for regional projects, such as bus repairs, bus purchases, MARC improvements, and other things that can't be pinpointed on a map. They are, however, as I said, included in the TIP document. They're just not on this story map. The interactive map allows you to search for bike and pedestrian projects or other projects such as ADA upgrades. So that's a quick overview of the TIP process and a look at some of the major projects included in the TIP. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Ms. Anna Marshall, who will discuss some of the air quality components of the TIP. Anna?
Great. Thank you, Keith, and thank you everybody for being here this evening. As mentioned, I am Anna Marshall and I serve as the environmental planner for the Baltimore Metropolitan Council and lead the federally required air quality conformity determination process for the BRTB. First of all, the Baltimore region does not meet the national standard for ozone, which is an air pollutant, and so it must review its current transportation plans and programs to ensure conformity with the State Air Quality Implementation Plan, also known as the SIP. Ozone or smog is caused by a chemical reaction between sunlight and emissions from cars and trucks. High levels of ozone in the air can trigger health reactions in sensitive populations. You might be wondering what all of this means. For some background, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, sets the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, also known as NAAQS, for 6 common air pollutants. They also then determine which regions do not meet these standards. The state establishes a plan for how the Baltimore region will achieve ozone standards and sets motor vehicle emission budgets for pollutants called volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides, also called VOCs and NOx emissions. These are the main contributors to ozone pollution, so they are important to monitor. The air quality assessment document details an analysis of the Baltimore region mobile source emissions as a result of implementing the 2025 to 2028 TIP. Mobile source emissions come from cars, trucks, buses, and any other gas-powered vehicle that travels on our roads. Next, I'll go over some highlights of the document. Staff from BMC and the Maryland Department of the Environment, or MDE, used the Motor Vehicle Emissions Simulator model, also called the MOVES model, to analyze the amount of mobile source emissions generated from vehicle travel associated with the projects in the TIP. The analysis includes socioeconomic forecasts, including population, housing, and employment numbers. And as previously mentioned, the document addresses VOCs and NOx emissions, which contribute to ozone pollution. Current data about the types and purpose of vehicles, fuel, and weather are used as input into the analysis. And modeled emissions for the TIP are well below the emission budgets set in the state implementation plan. Therefore, implementing the projects in the draft TIP will not cause new air quality violations, worsen any existing violations, or delay timely attainment of the national ambient air quality standards. So why is an air quality analysis needed? This conformity analysis is a federal requirement under the Clean Air Act for urban areas that do not meet the standards. The Baltimore region is considered a moderate non-attainment area for the ground level ozone standard set in 2015. This means that levels of ozone pollution in the air are slightly higher than the federally allowable amount of 70 parts per billion. The air quality analysis evaluates whether the transportation projects in the TIP and the long-range plan would slow the progress of that region attaining the air quality standard. In conclusion, the tables below show that implementing the projects in the TIP results in modeled emissions measuring below the budgeted amounts. And you can check out the numbers and in the following tables and follow the links in the story map to learn more. I will now hand it over to Monica Haynes-Banqueta to tell you how you can get involved and comment.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So glad to have you here. I just wanted to share with you how you can share your comments or questions. We're going to be here to answer questions and thoughts that you have tonight. And then we also wanted to just let you know that comments are welcome through June 17th. You can share them online on our project website, which is at publicinput.com/brtb-tip. We accept comments by email at brtb-tip@publicinput.com. You can also take a survey by using your phone by text message. You can text the keyword BRTB-tip to the number 73224. And you can send us a voicemail at toll free at 1-855-925-2801, extension 10279. We're even on social media at Baltimore Metro Co. using the hashtags BRTBListens. And you're welcome to share your comments now through the chat box, or raise your hand and we'll have you come off mute, and we're happy to answer any questions and definitely hope to hear from you.
Thank you, Monica. I appreciate that. And I want to thank Keith and Anna for taking us through the projects and the air quality part. So at this time, if anybody here has questions or they would like clarification about how to find information, we're happy to take your questions. So we're going to just hang on for a little bit for anybody that would like to chat with us.
Hi, this is Audrey Sellers. I'm from Disability Rights, Maryland. I have a question about, and I'm not sure if you can answer this, but the ADA improvements that are going to be made at Martin Airport. I was just wondering about any detail on that.
Now, I believe several months ago, MTA came in front of the board with an amendment. They had an FTA, Federal Transit Administration grant, to make improvements to the MARC station at the airport. It's probably related to the platform and access, but we could ask for specific details for you.
No, I believe that's it. We actually wrote a letter supporting the grant application.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
believe that sounds right, unless there's anything else that you can think of.
I don't offhand, but we can
Okay.
check, and Keith and I can go back and look at what year the money was programmed, very likely in the this year in 24 or in 25, but we can find out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are there questions from anybody else that might be listening tonight? We do appreciate you attending and learning. This recording will be added to the public input website, where the survey questions that Monica mentioned also reside. And if you would like to write comments, we accept those. And as you can see here, you can text, send them email, voicemail, all kinds of options in the modern language here. Okay, well, the comment period is open through June 17. So if anybody does have comments, please take your time to think about what's going on and then submit that, and then the board will respond to comments. It does not appear that there are any additional comments or questions, so I think we're going to wrap up for the night. We're, again, very appreciative that you joined us. Thank you.